This lecture is about checks and balances in the executive branch. So just to recap, here's a basic list of checks and balances between, the president and Congress. The president signs legislation that Congress gives to him, but they can override vetoes. He can veto. He can call special sessions of Congress to discuss issues. Congress can advance the president's legislative agenda or not. If they want to block him, they have to approve his appointments and ratify his treaties, etc., etc. So this is your first flit. You don't have to write this FRQ, just plan it. So you have to identify and explain two ways that Congress can check a presidential power. So again, just plan it, you don't have to write it. And also identify and explain two ways that the president can check congressional power. And this is obviously worth 8 points, because you get 2 points for identifying and explaining, but 2 times each, which is 4 per section. Alright, so the president and the judiciary have some checks and balances as well. The president gets to appoint judges and justices, and they don't really have much influence over the judiciary after that point, but that's more of another unit. Congress can declare acts by the president, like the most recent Muslim travel ban, unconstitutional. There are 2 media areas regarding the office of the presidency. There's the pre-FDR media, when it was not as exciting, and the post-FDR media. Pre-FDR media, during that time, media was not necessarily welcomed at the White House, and it was, tightly controlled. The administration had full control over what ended up in the newspaper on the news. That's how FDR was able to get away with, no one knowing that he had polio. He and his staff controlled every bit of media that came out of the White House. After FDR, the media was embraced as a tool for the president to use to get public communication out on the airwaves and to influence people. But it is a double-edged sword. Once you invite the media into the White House, they have access to the White House, and you have less control over your own narrative. The media continues to grow, the popularity of the radio, the television, and more recently the internet, blogs, that sort of thing, Twitter. And so media has just gotten more all-encompassing in the past few years. There are also 2 media eras in relation to personal matters. So the FDR bit was just how the office of the presidency is presented in the press. There's the pre-Watergate media era in relation to president's personal matters, and the post-Watergate era. In the pre-Watergate era, the media rarely reported negatively about the president, and there was a lot of respect in the media for the office itself. After Watergate, it's kind of a free-for-all. The media can and will talk about scandals and personal life, and we wound up impeaching a president because he lied about having an affair, which, from a governmental standpoint, seems kind of ludicrous, except those things matter now. Thanks, Nixon. So Article 2, Section 1, Clause 1, has really one of the only references to the vice president, other than his title as President of the Senate in the Constitution. It says the executive power shall be vested in the President of the United States of America, and he shall hold his office during the term of 4 years, and together with his vice president, chosen for the same term, to be elected as fellows. The only authority the vice president has is what the president gives him. And the president can take that away. That is something that Herbert Humphrey said to LBJ. LBJ was pretty notoriously, it didn't get along with his vice president. And JFK did not get along with LBJ very much either. There's another quote from John Nance Garner, who was the vice president to FDR during one of his terms, and it says, the office of the vice president is not worth a bucket of warm spit. Apparently FDR did not give him a lot of leeway. Now, presidents differ on how much influence they provide their vice presidents. George W. Bush is really famous for governing almost as equals with Cheney, and Obama gave Biden a lot of stuff to do, but not all presidents are like that. Officially, vice presidents have 2 roles, according to the Constitution. Again, they preside over the Senate. That's called President of the Senate. It's the only constitutional duty that they have. really they just show up to like lobby for the White House, or they can break ties if there's a tie in the Senate. They also help determine presidential disability and serve as president if there is such a case. The 25th Amendment, which was passed in 1976, set up how presidential succession would work. So this next slide details that, and we've looked at this in class. There's section 1 about if the president has to be removed from death or removed from office because of death or resignation, the vice president will become president. And then each of the following sections goes into detail about what will happen if something happens to the vice president. It would go to the president pro tempore, the most senior member of the Senate, and then it would go to the Speaker of the House. And then it would start going to different members of the cabinet. The last cabinet position on the list would be the Department of Homeland Security, simply because it's the newest. I'm going to have you guys watch a YouTube video from The West Wing, which is a great show, by the way. If you want to feel good about the government, it's something that makes you feel happy and positive. But it's about the 25th Amendment. It is fictional, obviously, but I'll have you all watch that along with this. I'll post it with the lecture. Article 2, Section 1, Clause 8 says, in the case of the removal of the president from office or his death, resignation, or inability to discharge the powers and duties of the said office, the same shall devolve on the vice president. Congress may by law provide the case of removal, death, resignation, or inability, both of the president and vice president, declaring what officer shall then act as president, and such officer shall act accordingly until the disability be removed or the president or a new president shall be elected. So, when the 25th Amendment goes into effect, the vice president, who would become the president in the event of some issue, would nominate a new VP. That vice president would be confirmed by both houses instead of by vote. And that's according to the Presidential Succession Act of 1947. So this is the list of presidential succession. This is the unupdated one, because not all of these secretaries are in place. So I'll just show you Obama's. Joe Biden was the vice president, then it would go to Speaker of the House, then President Pro Tem, Secretary of State, which was the first State Department to be established under George Washington, and then down through all of the secretaries in Congress, down to the Secretary of Homeland Security, Jeh Johnson. All right, that is all I have here, so just make sure you watch this YouTube video, and there's actually no flipped assignment here. I'll see y'all tomorrow.